Welcome back. You are listening to Whissel Wednesdays here on KCBQ 1170. I was showing some of the guys here in the studio the videos over the break of McCamey Manor. What do you guys think?
That's dangerous.
It's legit, meaning, you know, it's not like a hoax. The Travel Channel's talking about it, LA Times, you know, you were showing us the clips on there. Still unique, and it's the whole entire year. It's a year-round reservation system. Yeah,
Right.
It's crazy. So, nuts though, man. I wouldn't even drive by that house, man.
And what did the neighbors think with all the screaming and yelling and everything going on in there? It's crazy.
I would imagine they have some good attorneys. If not, we need to give them Daniel, right?
You know.
They need some.
I mean,
Private nuisance, public nuisance. I mean, it's a cause of action that you rarely win. So
I hope they own the house, because if the landlord knew about that, they might want to evict them.
Right.
Oh,
There you go. There you
speaking of eviction, so Daniel, let's talk a little bit to our listeners about what they need to know about eviction. So let's start out for our owners of rental property. What are some of the really important things owners of rental property need to know when it comes to evictions to protect themselves?
Well, I think the key point obviously is going to be the rental agreement. You know, the nature of the rental agreement, whether or not you want to step into a lease. A lot of people basically want to jump into a lease because it looks like it's, you know, more security. I mean, actually, you know, 90% of the landlord-tenant relationships start with a lease, and then, of course, by operation of law, goes into a month-to-month at the end of the lease. But it doesn't really make sense. I mean, you want a long-term relationship with somebody you don't even know. I really think the model should be you do the rental agreement, you have it fixed in, you give an option. I mean, you know, an option to buy, an option to lease. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's, to be honest with you, you don't see any of those.
So you got to go on a few dates before you get married.
Yeah, probably more than a few. Well, I don't know. You know, if she's willing to pay you know, to go on a date, I mean, that's fine.
Really?
Right.
You know, just don't make it like a 1 year, you know, lease date.
Right.
You
And
know,
what's the pitfall? I mean, if signing a 1-year lease, what kind of stuff could happen to somebody as a landlord?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, basically. It's as long as it, for example, here's the key thing, and I see this all the time. The easiest way to evict somebody is if they don't pay rent. Well, what happens if they're paying rent and they set up this torture chamber, you know, at their house? Well, they're paying rent, and like I said, public-private nuisance is a really difficult statute to evict somebody.
Unless it's on YouTube.
Well, yeah, well, no, this is a matter of evidence. The statute is vague. The statute itself is not like, oh, okay, well, they didn't pay rent, you're out.
Right.
CCP 1161. You get to the public-private nuisance, it's like, oh, what does that mean? Substantial, reasonable. At that point in time, you know, you're probably not going to win. I don't even take those cases.
Okay.
It's a waste of time. I got enough, you know, good cases.
Right. You pick and choose the ones that you know you can win for your clients, and time's money, and you want to make sure you're spending time on money you can collect for you and your clients.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. And that's, you know, in evictions, the main thing, too, is, you know, nothing hurts. You wake somebody up with a 3-day notice, even if you think that they're a good tenant, and they're always saying, oh, I'm paying late, and then they don't pay. And I'll just, you know, on the side, you know, a lot of tenants, it isn't so much that they, you know, want to break the word, obviously, but they just can't. There's some people who won't pay rent, and there's other people who can't pay rent. And that really is important to people to understand. But that does not mean, that doesn't give them the right, and the landlord shouldn't wait for 2 months. A lot of time, a 3-day notice, just somebody, you know, who's really concerned, boom, will wake them up. You hit it early, and they're going to start, you know, balancing. They're going to go, wow, I was late last month, I got a 3-day notice. You know, maybe I shouldn't buy that Ferrari.
Right.
You know, and that's what the priority is.
Yeah.
I mean, just wake them up to a priority, do it early. Just because you serve a 3-day notice, obviously you don't have to sue them.
Now there's a Ferrari down in the garage. Is that yours, Daniel?
No, I've got the Audi. Well, I've got I own an Audi. You know.
Do you have the R8?
No, I got the A8.
Okay.
Well, okay, I own the A8, which means I've got 2 A4s. I'll just be honest. I wish I could drive an A8, but I got 2 A4s.
Okay, nice. I learned that lesson a long time ago, you know, managing property is if somebody is late, you know, most rental agreements they give till the 5th of the month before late fees, you know, get applied. And on that 6th of the month, you better be serving that 3-day notice. Technically, you could serve it on the 1st.
I was going to say,
Yes.
that's a very good point to bring it up,
Yes.
because the 5-day late fee is a penalty.
Right.
They are late on the 2nd.
Right.
Okay, and that's where you don't want to wait for that thing. And oh yeah, I see this all the time, and I'm glad I'm on the radio because this is huge. Do not. It says 3-day notice to pay rent. I'm emphasizing rent or quit. People come to me all the time with a 3-day notice, and it's got a late fee. That's the classic mistake.
Right.
You know, it's a rent case. And there's another statute, I don't want to bore you, breaching covenants and conditions. You know, some great lawyers can say, oh, you didn't say that. That's another one that's difficult. You don't want to add, you know, money and all these things.
Yep.
A 3-day notice to pay rent or quit is kind of like a glass of water. Okay, this is important. You cannot overstate rent. Doesn't have to be accurate, but man, you fill up that glass of water, even a couple of drops, you lose.
Okay.
Done. That's very important too. No late fees. Underestimate the amount of money they owe you. You'll be good.
Just don't overestimate.
Do not overestimate.
Because then it becomes worthless.
Well, they just lose jurisdiction. It's like, how can you be unlawfully detaining something that's, you know, they basically don't owe that much money.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, so I mean, I learned that too. I used to give people so much leeway. It's like, oh, you don't have your rent in. It's, oh, I'll pay it by Friday. And then Friday comes, they don't pay. Oh, I'll pay it by next Friday. And rent doesn't come. And as soon as you start cutting people slack when it comes to their rent, they just, you give them an inch, they take a mile, you know?
Yeah, it's not just that. It's an issue of what we call reliance, you know, in the law. You know, especially you say, okay, I'm going to let you pay on the 15th a couple of times, and then you slap them with the 3-day notice on the 2nd.
Yeah.
Guess what? Hey, we got this practice. It's really not due until the 15th. You lose, you know, because now it's become due on the 15th.
Right.
That's...
You know, here's something I read over the weekend. I was getting caught up on my emails. And one of the gentlemen, I read his mortgage blog every day. His little thing at the end talked about the gentleman talking to his attorney, like, hey, this guy owes me $500, but I don't really have proof. I gave him $500, it was verbal. So the attorney said, well, send him an email saying you owe me $1,000, Kyle. He goes, but he only owes me $500. Trust me. You send him an email saying you owe me $1,000. Kyle, in this example, replies, no, I only owe you $500. The attorney goes, there's your proof.
Yeah.
Smart.
It's always, you know,
That's all knowing, right?
That's what we call in the law, it's called a declaration against interest. And that's the kind of case I'd like to take.
Yeah.
You know, and in a trial, I love the situation. You want to be in a situation where even if the defendant's story is true, they still lose.
Okay.
You use their admissions, but also you kind of lose their weak defense. But that's the best position to be in. You just take their story, and you prove their story, and they still lose.
Gotcha. So you're listening to Whissel Wednesdays here on KCVQ 1170. We're talking with Daniel Marshall Law here in San Diego. We actually share an office building together. Daniel is, you know, one of the top eviction attorneys in San Diego, if not number one. So anybody who has eviction needs, we'd love to connect you with them. You can always shoot us a text, 619-663-7355, 619-663-7355, or visit us on whisselwednesdays.com. We'd love to get you connected with Daniel. So we're talking about the landlord side of the eviction equation. Let's talk about the tenant side of it. For those that maybe have a landlord threatening them with an eviction, or they're going through an eviction, what should tenants know?
Well, you know, in those situations, I don't represent a lot of tenants, but I do represent a few. You know, I enjoy basically being in court and then kind of sliding over to the other side of the table and represent the tenants. And I am empathetic. Like I said, you know, sometimes it's not basically, you know, they just can't pay rent. And what you really want to basically do, for example, is say you're paying late, okay? One thing you can do is, hey, if you get some extra money, pay early. That's one thing that works.
Okay.
In terms of the law, you know, the bottom line is this, you know, kind of as a plaintiff's attorney, you know, and actually it's interesting because I just talked to a lady and she basically, you know, some of these people think that they're going to get evicted, the sheriff's going to show up after 3 days. That's not going to happen. The bottom line is the landlord cannot evict them. Okay? I, as the attorney, cannot evict them. Okay? The judge can't evict them. The only person who can evict them is a sheriff.
Right.
And it takes a long time to get to the sheriff, and it takes longer because of the court budget system. You know? And so that's the thing, is it's going to take a long time.
What's a long time?
It used to take 30 days, you know,
Okay.
30 days about 2 years ago. Then the budget imploded. They closed South Bay for civil. They closed East County for civil. Now, in San Diego, they only have one department in Central Court. One department
Wow.
for all evictions other than the North County, and they only have one department.
Okay.
So now it's going to be at least 60 days. And if you run up against an attorney, like when I represent tenants, watch out. It's going to take a long time because there's just a lot of procedural things that you can do.
So I'm sure there's a ton of procedural things, as you refer to them, that they can do, but let's give our listeners one. And then if they want to talk to you about some of those others, then we'll have them reach out to you. So what's one little trick that a tenant can use to buy themselves some more time? I mean, let's just say, you know, people go through hard times. They lose a job, or somebody passes away, or, you know.
Or they
rough
bet
stuff
against the
happens.
Chargers and pick the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean,
There you go. Yeah, the gambling.
Yeah,
they
they-
picked the wrong home game.
they use your philosophy on betting on the Chargers and it doesn't work. So, I mean, somebody runs, you know, they're up against it and they need a little bit more time. What's one little trick that they might be able to use to buy themselves some more time? That's
Well-
legal and ethical.
You know, the bottom line is you got to make a choice. Do you want a bankruptcy on your record or not? Okay, and if you don't care, if you get a lot of debt, the best thing to do is bankruptcy. Okay, but the issue is timing. The best time to file bankruptcy in an eviction scenario is the day before trial. Bottom line, federal court will always trump state court, and you know it doesn't matter. I mean, I've had state court judges where I've tried to convince on the plaintiff side saying, look, the state doesn't apply. They don't care. You know, they don't want to have some federal marshal come and handcuff them for violation of bankruptcy state. Bankruptcy is the easiest.
Okay.
I mean, I know a lot of state court motion stuff, and we won't bore
We'll
you
go to
with
more than that, but you
So
can
we've
text us.
actually had an awesome bankruptcy attorney here in the studio, and you share an office with him.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the thing of it is, and I, you know, bankruptcy attorneys really run into that. I get a lot of referrals, you know, from bankruptcy attorneys. And,
Definitely.
you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, so if you need help, eviction-wise, bankruptcy-wise, any of that stuff, that's what the goal of this show is to really be there, be a resource for you, be able to help you out, whether you're a tenant going through an eviction, whether you're a landlord, you know, that need to evict somebody, whether you're going, you know, through some rough times financially, life happens, you need help with that. That's our goal here on Whissel Wednesdays, to be that resource for you, to help you out with anything you need. And obviously, real estate, you know, mortgage related, that's where Jason Hall and I are here to kind of help out with that stuff. So, I mean, anytime you want to connect with myself, Jason Hall, Team Home Loans, Daniel Marshall, Marshall Law, Lawrence Mudgett with Safer Law, myself over at Whissel Realty, you can always visit us, whisselwednesdays.com, or text us 619-663-7355. Again, that's 619-663-7355. And we just want to be that resource. There's a lot of people that when they, you know, run into these hard times or going through stuff, first thing they do is just hop on Google, you know, and try to find an attorney, try to find a realtor, you know, to help them out. And you don't want to go at it alone. I mean, you can't trust the reviews that are out there. It's so easy to game these systems, you know, and get positive reviews about yourself. So you want to reach out to somebody you trust. Hopefully, you know, listening to our show here, you built some trust in us. We'd love to be that resource to help you out. Again, 619-663-7355. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit more with Daniel Marshall, Marshall Law, about some of the civil litigation stuff and some of the stories that you run into recently. You're listening to Whissel Wednesdays here on KCBQ 1170.